Hello guys, this is Dark Fox Sage 2 and we are back with our new fanfic, which is what if Naruto was reincarnated with Rinnegan and Mokutan in past part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. Team 7 had met up in the village after scouting around, except Hashirama wasn't with them. Where could he be? Naruto thought gingerly. They heard a loud noise coming from the inside of the only fully built house and rushed inside. There they saw Hashirama yelling at a man who was tied up, a hole in the wall with a crowbar wedged in it. Naruto immediately knew that this man was either a spy or a hired shinobi sent to kill them, and he was being interrogated. What were you sent for? Hashirama roared at the man. The man chuckled slightly. I told you, I'm not saying a word, he said, coughing from his injuries. Hashirama then took notice to Team 7. Naruto, would you be able to get him break? Hashirama said, making the man laugh. You think that a mere child will be able to do something you, a legend in your own right, couldn't, he said, laughing and spluttering his blood out. I don't need you alive, so yes, Hashirama said, allowing Naruto to step up. The man was smirking and looking into Naruto's eyes, in an attempt to scare him. Naruto just whispered something before driving his hand straight through the man's chest. The man looked surprised before he felt something being pulled out as the Naruto's hand retracted. He looked in horror as he saw a transparent essence come out of his body before his eyes grew heavy and he closed them, for good. Naruto processed the info he got from the man before his eyes widened. Damn it, we don't have much time, Naruto shouted, suddenly making the others jump. What are you talking about, Naruto? Hashirama asked with worry. We need to get the area locked down. The water daimyo has sent an army of mercenaries and shinobi, he's even coming himself, Naruto said, making everyone's eyes widen. He's getting desperate, he really doesn't want to give this land up, Hashirama said. How close are they? He asked Naruto. 5 minutes, he replied. Damn it. We need to get out now. Naruto, Tsunade, secure the perimeter with shadow clones, Orochimaru, gather the workers and bring them all in here. Jiraiya, set up seals around the building. I don't want them sneaking in when we aren't looking. I'll also stay back to protect if necessary, Hashirama commanded quickly, with Team 7 following the orders like Anbu. What shall happen now, Hokage-sama? Takehiro asked nervously. To put it simply, a massacre, Hashirama replied grimly. Takehiro's eyes widened. You should get inside, Takehiro-san. This won't be pretty, Hashirama said, his eyes gazing over the clearing that would become covered in blood in only a few minutes. Takehiro nodded and walked inside with the rest of the civilians. A few minutes later, Team 7 regrouped and faced the direction that the army was going to come from. The emotions on their faces varied. Jiraiya had a look of nervousness, his face covered in beads of sweat. Orochimaru's face was emotionless, except his eyes, which showed his fear of what might happen. Tsunade was glancing towards Naruto with worry evident on her face, but Naruto's expression was what made her confidence grow. Naruto had his war face on, his eyes showing experience in battle, not as much as she had seen in her grandfather, but experience nonetheless. Hashirama could see the looks on 3 of his students from where he was standing on the roof and frowned. While he knew Naruto was ready for this, the others weren't used to seeing bloodshed. Naruto had indeed killed in front of the 3, but there were 2 problems with this. 1. They never actually saw blood spilled, and 2, and probably the most important, they themselves had never killed. Seeing someone killed is one thing, doing it yourself is another. Another thing that worried him was that while he was probably the best shinobi since the Raikudo Sennin, he was getting too old to fight. He knew he wasn't in his prime, and that made him worry for both his family and village, as Tobirama wasn't much younger. He knew that while Hiruzen was strong, he was inexperienced and people would hardly take Naruto seriously. He could see Naruto staring directly where the army of mercenaries from where he was standing. Maybe if they rise through the ranks quickly enough will help people take their opinions seriously, he mused to himself. Naruto could feel the negative emotions of everyone around him, but when he felt Tsunade's emotion grow positive, he assumed that she unconsciously sensed his emotion and gained her confidence. He could see the army in the distance, led by a man with dark blue robes and many jewels, the man who he guessed was the current water daimyo. This is going to get ugly, he thought, not changing his expression. The water daimyo and his army of mercenaries were now only 100 yards away. The smirk on the daimyo's face was one-off arrogance. This is the protection that supposedly defeated 3 fully grown men, he said, making the mercenaries laugh. Team 7's expression didn't change. Seeing this, the daimyo scowled. Alright kiddies, I'll give you one chance to get out of my way before I kill you, he said, releasing ki on them, expecting them to run away screaming. To his surprise, they didn't even blink and instead fell into their taijutsu stances. He scowled once more before saying 2 simple words. Kill them. His army rushed towards the 4 kids, and to his surprise, the kids charged too. Naruto started punching and kicking the mercenaries out of his way, solely intent on killing the daimyo, but not forgetting to keep an eye on his teammates, his whole body soaked in their blood. Tsunade, Orochimaru and Jiraiya were working in sync just so they could keep up with Naruto. They were, like Naruto, covered in blood, only not as much. The 3 felt like throwing up but held it back for fear of getting killed while they released their meals from what felt like the last few days. Naruto began using his Rasengan to keep their path clear, and they made sure to follow it and not get lost in the sea of blood. Get back now, Naruto yelled at the 3. They immediately looked back to see Naruto jump back with them. Naruto could see the look of utter horror on the daimyo's face for a split second before the man regained his composure. I'll admit, you're pretty good Gaki, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to end this, the daimyo said. Naruto suddenly found himself in front of the man, bound with ropes, and Kiri Jonin with his headband slashed standing beside him. The daimyo grabbed a sword that was latched onto his waist and pulled it out with a hiss. Naruto began to chuckle. The daimyo thought this was strange but just said to himself softly, at least I'll kill him before he goes mad. He brought the sword crashing down to Naruto's shoulder, hearing the screams of the boy's teammates when he burst into a flock of crows, causing the Jonin to fall and take the hit on his leg as well. The daimyo pulled his sword out in shock. Where had the boy gone to, was the thought on his mind. Team 7 meanwhile all had looks of relief on their faces. Tsunade was going to kill him later and Naruto knew it, but for now, the mission came first. He created hundreds of kage bushin and told them to kawarimi and henge with various items around the daimyo, from twigs to leaves to rocks. He then jumped over the boulder he was hiding behind. The daimyo was surprised to see him but smirked. That was a nice little trick, kid, but it ends here, you're still heavily outnumbered, give up, he said. Naruto smirked himself, forming the horse hand sign. Kaden. Goka Mekyaku, he said. The daimyo was in a state of shock at seeing such a powerful jutsu that even against the stronger element that the Kiri shinobi were using, it still kept coming until his army was cut in half. By this time most of his mercenaries were running away, but he still had nearly all the shinobi, who were either current Jonin or war veterans. You're good, kid, really good, but this is where it ends, the daimyo said before ordering his men to charge. Naruto picked up one of the swords from the deceased Jonin and charged the men. As he did, he activated his Rinnegan and to his surprise, time seemed to slow down. He stabbed and decapitated the men with ease. To everyone else's eyes he was moving at a heart-stopping rate, killing the men so fast that they only saw him as he withdrew his sword from their guts. Naruto then reached the middle of what remained of the army, shinobi. He started to counter each Jonin by using another. Using one man's sword to block another's before putting him in an arm lock and ramming the man's sword through his lungs. He then ducked under a mace another man used, the mace ramming itself through another's stomach, crushing his liver as well. Naruto then drove his sword through the man's throat and pulled it out just in time to duck a halberd one of the veterans used. Due to the man's experience, however, Naruto didn't get a chance to counter as he jumped back from the man, a blade attached to his boot that came swinging where Naruto's head once was. The man jumped back to the daimyo, who noticed that he only had 30 veterans left. Naruto knew that these men would prove the most difficult as their sheer experience gave them an edge over him. He was panting slightly and there wasn't one part of his cloths or the ground beneath him that wasn't drenched in the blood of the fallen men that lay at his feet. He could see his team had stayed well back and out of range of the carnage, but they too were covered in blood from the mercenaries that decided to stay back attack them after running away from him. We'll definitely have earned a nickname after this, he thought as he looked back towards the last 30 men who stood beside the daimyo. Naruto coughed a bit, having swallowed some of the other men's blood. I really have to stop limiting myself like this. Using Shinra Tensei would be so much easier. Guess I won't get much stronger just using that though. Oh well, he thought to himself, annoyed. He picked up another sword and held them both, to his surprise, like a kenjutsu master, but he just put it down to his instincts. It happened before on several occasions with different situations, so why not now? He then noticed that the swords were vibrating. He was curious and unknowingly channeled some of Akira's chakra into them. They suddenly expanded until they were long and sharp enough so he could stay out of range but still easily pierce someone with the blade. The 30 men and the daimyo were surprised to see the swords change, and while the daimyo passed it off, the veterans became tense from the chakra that was only visible to the trained eye. Its potency and the pure ki that surrounded it was worrisome and put them on edge. Naruto charged them head on and let his instincts do the fighting. The sound of metal clashing screeched through the air. Naruto was blocking and parrying the men's weapons, swords, kunai, sais or whatever else they used. He managed to counter the men like he did with the rest earlier with extreme difficulty, but he still managed. Soon only one man remained standing. The mask he wore fell to the ground. Naruto was surprised to see who this man was, as he expected an old veteran by the way the man held himself. He was looking at the future Sandaime Mizukage, Terumi Masanori, the grandfather of the Godime Mizukage, Terumi Mei. He charged the man, and while he didn't want to kill him, he did want to leave a reminder. He drove his sword through him, just under his collarbone, barely missing any organs or bones, and let him fall. Masanori stood back up shakily before he ran away, leaving the daimyo with nobody left to defend him. The daimyo fell to his knees in fear. You're right, Naruto said. It does end here, he said before plunging both his swords straight down the middle of his collarbone on each side. Just as his soul was about to leave his body, Naruto grabbed it and gained his memories before letting it go. He withdrew his swords from the now deceased daimyo, letting the man fall. He closed the man's mouth and eyelids before walking back towards his team. Just as he reached them, he fell to one knee, realizing how tired he was. Well, pant, I could do pant with some pant, shut eye, he said before collapsing. Hashirama came down from the roof having seen the entire thing. Good work, Team 7. This will be rewarded with S-rank pay. You should wash up and get some rest, he said softly to them, picking Naruto up. The 3 conscience members simply nodded and walked down to the river to wash off, not easy since a lot of the dead bodies fell in and made the water bloody. They walked back up to the village foundations and into the building. The job wasn't complete yet, so they might as well get some rest. 3 days later, Naruto had regained his consciousness after the first day and for the first time, got to see the bloody massacre that he had created, a scar that would never leave the land because of the sheer amount of blood. Even though Hashirama had asked a few of the women to clean his cloths and skin, he still had a lot of blood covering him. His hair was crusted with it and his cloths were now practically the color of blood, as if they always were. He saw that the people of the new village were still clearing the bodies of various bandits and shinobi alike. Did I really do all of this, he thought. He walked around and the people of the future village were smiling, almost conflicted with emotion, at him. Not that he could blame them. After all, not many 6-year-olds are used to killing or the sight of the bloodbath that would forever stain the land. Then again, even his 17-year-old mind wasn't ready for it, only through his instinct did he endure it. The mission and his teammates came first, his problem with the mission came later. He saw Hashirama talking to Takehiro with a serious look on his face. They were right by the lake that lead to the ocean. Takehiro didn't look too happy either. Wonder what that's about, Naruto thought curiously. Hashirama saw Naruto and gave a dismissing wave to Takehiro. Naruto walked towards him. So, what's going on? He asked the elderly Hokage. Hashirama looked grimly over the lake's horizon. War, he stated softly. One word, that was all that was needed to make things go from getting better to worse. How bad? Naruto asked, looking into the man's eyes as he turned back to face him. The Great Shinobi War, bad, was the chilling reply he got. The first war in his time was over the Biju, so it didn't happen in this time, but if Naruto were to guess, this war would be like the Second Great War. Do they know yet? Naruto asked. No, but Tsunade has shared her suspicions with Jiraiya and Orochimaru, Hashirama. Naruto looked at the man with sympathy. He could tell that Hashirama didn't want Tsunade to know, but she had always been bright, it wouldn't take long before she figured it out. You might as well tell them now, it'll save you the trouble later, Naruto told him. I plan to, Hashirama said. The two looked back out over the ocean. These would be the last few days of living in peace, nobody would be able to enjoy this again for a while. We had better start getting ready to leave, Hashirama said, looking away. Yeah, Naruto said softly. You seem troubled, Hashirama said. In my time, the Third War was the war that the Densetsu no Sannin got their name, but neither you nor your brother lived to see it, Naruto told him. Hashirama immediately understood what he meant. You're scared for them, he said. Naruto nodded. No offense, but I would be able to take your death easily, but everyone else, especially those three, I'm not so sure. Hell, Tsunade was never the same after you got killed, Naruto told him, making the elderly man nod in understanding. You seem to have grown close to her, Hashirama stated. Naruto grinned so slightly that it only looked like a twitch. I've always had some sort of relationship with her. Every day it gets harder to see my Ba-chan, and while I used to wonder why Jiraiya liked her that way, I myself find it hard not to, he said almost nostalgically. You shouldn't forget that since you saved her, she hasn't been the same, but for the better in terms of change, Hashirama told him. As long as she doesn't go past blushing, I'm good, for now, Naruto said, remembering that the man was slightly more perverted than average men. Hashirama chuckled to himself but put a serious face back on. I hate to say it, but even if I survive the battles, I'll succumb to my old age before this war is done, and Tobirama will only have a few years before the same happens to him, Hashirama said solemnly. Naruto looked at the man. Well then, last days are best spent with family, maybe you should speak your mind to them, before it's too late, he suggested. Hashirama seemed to contemplate on this. You know that once me and my brother die, Tsunade won't have much left, he told Naruto. Naruto just nodded. She has her mother, her grandmother, and you, whom she can actually talk to and feel safe talking to. Then she has Naoki-kun, who she'll probably protect to her death once we're gone, which is what worries me, Hashirama said, knowing that Naruto would catch the message hidden in it. Don't worry, she'll stay safe, Naruto said in an effort to convince the elder man. Hashirama smiled slightly. I shouldn't be thinking about my death, but I don't have my wife's longevity. It has always been the one thing that I never understood, he said in an almost curious tone. Well, we had better be getting back to them. We've been talking for 10 minutes already, Naruto said, trying to get off topic. Yes, let's, Hashirama said, gazing out over the ocean one last time before leaving with Naruto. Both knew that the time of war was coming, and it was going to be like what would soon be known as the Great Massacre of the Water. Naruto saw Tsunade smiling at him almost lovingly. On the outside he smiled back. But on the inside his stomach was churning. There is no training on this planet that can prepare her for what is to come, I only hope that you find out soon. Tsunade-chan, he thought before beginning a conversation. These were the final days before the Great Shinobi War, and nothing would prepare anyone for what would happen, as a legacy begins. Naruto was with the rest of Team 7, running back to the village, no longer having a civilian weighing them down. He had decided to keep the two swords he had fought with in order to learn Kenjutsu as he wanted to diverse his arsenal of experience. His body was still bloody, his hair crusted and red from the blood to his cloths that he would probably never use again but for intimidation. He started to think on when the next Chunin exams would be held, and whereas he knew that if he was to be taken seriously by the shinobi world in a war, then they, Team 7, would need to rise through the ranks quickly. He was letting his mind wander when he thought of his talk with Hashirama. If what he says is true, then he will die too soon for anybody but himself. This isn't going to bode well, he thought. He looked towards Tsunade. He had all but forgotten of his, Ba-chan, and was slowly but surely, whether he realized it or not, falling in love with her. But of course, his hormones were doing this, so he would have to wait, something he definitely didn't realize he was doing. They were nearing Konoha's borders and Naruto turned his Rinnegan on. He could see an almost veil-like essence over the village, even from the distance. He remembered when his, Ba-chan, had told him about this and began to wonder, exactly how had Hashirama made it. He didn't get much more time to think on it as they came up to the gate. Greeting Hokage-sama, welcome home, one of the Jonin on guard said. Hashirama smiled at the man and nodded. They went to the Hokage's tower to fill in the mission report. The first thing that they saw was Tobirama and Hiruzen looking at the recent update of the bingo books from Kiri and Kumo, their eyes widened. Tobirama looked up and laughed slightly. Well, Naruto-kun, you and Team 7 have definitely earned a name for yourselves, he said, handing his brother the bingo books to read out. Name: Uzumaki Naruto. Age: 6 years old. Rank: Kumo. SS Flee on Sight. Kiri. SS Flee on Sight. Description: sun-kissed blonde hair, fair skin, about 3 foot 7 inches. Affiliation: Konohagakure no Sato. Skills: Taijutsu, Low Jonin Info Limited Genjutsu, Unknown, Fuinjutsu, Jonin Level Info Limited Ninjutsu, Cage Level, Kenjutsu, Complete Mastery. Note: do not underestimate. Dujutsu description: metallic purple with 4 rings, first 3 have 3 tomo each. Warning: Dujutsu can control gravity. Thought to be a cross between the Sharingan and the Rinnegan, the eyes of the Raikudo Sennin. Bounty: Kumo, 13,750,000 Ryo dead, 15 million Ryo alive. Kiri, 15,500,000 Ryo dead, 20 million Ryo alive. Team members: Senju Tsunade, Orochimaru, Jiraiya. Side note: he and his team caused the Battle of the Waves. Monikers: Sanbato no Shinigami, servant of the Shinigami. Everyone was shocked at how fast the news had traveled and even went as far as Kumo, which was a few days longer journey with mountain trekking. Naruto was particularly surprised at the moniker he received. Are we in it? Jiraiya asked, still not recovered from the shock. Hashirama nodded. Yes, you are, but since you only took out bandits, you aren't as well known, doesn't mean your ranks are far behind, he said before reading out. Name: Senju Tsunade. Age: 5. Rank: high rank, kill on sight. Description: light blonde hair, fair skin, about 3 foot 4 inches. Affiliation: Konohagakure no Sato. Skills: Taijutsu, High Chunin, Genjutsu, Unknown, Ninjutsu, Unknown. Note: do not attack when near teammates, team works together flawlessly. Kekkei Genkai. Mokutan, thought to her by her grandfather, Senju Hashirama, SSS rank. Bounty. Kumo. 23 million Ryo alive, 500,000 Ryo dead. Kiri. 8 million Ryo dead or alive. Teammates. Uzumaki Naruto, SS rank, Orochimaru, high B rank, and Jiraiya, high B rank. Name. Orochimaru. Age. 6. Rank. High B rank, capture on site. Description. Black hair, pale skin, about 3 foot 6 inches. Affiliation. Konohagakure no Sato. Skills. Taijutsu, Mid-Chunin, Genjutsu and Ninjutsu, unknown. Note. Do not attack when near teammates, team works together flawlessly. Bounty. Kiri. 6 million Ryo dead or alive. Teammates. Uzumaki Naruto, SS rank, Senju Tsunade, high A rank, and Jiraiya, high B rank. Name. Jiraiya. Age. 5. Rank. High B rank, capture on site. Description. White hair, fair skin, about 3 foot 5 inches. Affiliation. Konohagakure no Sato. Skills. Taijutsu, Mid-Chunin, Genjutsu and Ninjutsu, unknown. Note. Do not attack when near teammates, team works together flawlessly. Bounty. 6 million Ryo dead or alive. Teammates. Uzumaki Naruto, SS rank, Senju Tsunade, high A rank, and Orochimaru, high B rank. The three were surprised to see this as there was only one man who got away that would have the guts to tell someone about them. He would have to have been watching them during their fight with the mercenaries. Naruto on the other hand felt like laughing. His whole team was in the bingo book and they were standing there with their mouths open like fish. That aside, the next Chunin exams are coming up soon, and the Fire and Lightning Daimyos have agreed to hold it in Konoha first this year, Tobirama said, getting everyone's attention. And after hearing about the great Team 7, he wants to see you compete in Konoha's exams as he will be here on business then with the Raikage, he continued. Tsunade gulped silently. The Raikage had already tried to kidnap her once, and while there was no doubt that she was better than she was when that incident happened, but only 10 people at the very most in this village could stand up to the man who had gained an army killer moniker, and she wasn't one of them. Naruto saw this and squeezed her hand and smiled at her. She blushed slightly but smiled back because she knew that no one else had seen it. They turned back to Tobirama, who looked slightly skeptical about what he would say next. This choice is yours and time is on your side as it has only been a week since Suna held the exams, he said. But, Naruto said, almost stating that Tobirama was leaving something out. Tobirama sighed. But he wants to put you up against 3 of the top Jonin of Kumo, veterans. One man saw the end of the clan wars and even fought in it, Tobirama said grimly. Naruto looked away from the man to think. Why would he, the Fire Daimyo, agree to something like this when he only has rumors of our skill to back up, he thought before he realized something. We will be fighting as a team, right? After all, we'll be tired after fighting others if we don't end our matches fast, he said. I understand why you would think this, but you will be fighting these 3 and that's it. No one else, I hope, Tobirama said, muttering the last part. Naruto meanwhile was worried. I have no doubt that Tsunade and I can handle them, but if they separate us from Jiraiya and Orochimaru then they're likely to get killed, he thought. His face grew to one of realization. Which would make Tsunade lose control of her emotions and try to kill them, but they would easily kill her alone. Once she's dead, the same will happen to me if I'm not careful, he thought, dumbfounded that he even came up with something like this. Hey, guess Tsunade-chan is rubbing off on me, he thought. It's an attempt to kill us, Naruto said flatly. Everyone looked at him like he had grown a second head, but when he explained his theory to them, their eyes widened. Of course, they would have had spies looking into these things. They want to be rid of you before you can become too strong, Hiruzen said. Well then what can we do? Jiraiya asked nervously. Naruto's eyes widened once more. Give me about 30 minutes and I might have a better solution than just training, he said, earning a curious nod from Hashirama. Naruto sat down on the floor near a wall where no one could see him or feel his presence and began to meditate. Akira-chan might know how to solve this, he thought, as his outer form became unconscious and he wandered into his mindscape. Naruto's mindscape. Naruto opened his eyes to see his figure change to an 18-year-old teen, just like he had been before he traveled back in time. His mindscape had improved over the years since he was 12 in his time. It was an ideal place for Naruto. A village that once scorned him now greeting him. His subconscious had made any familiar faces into real people in his mindscape. Only instead of the one from his time, it was now from the present time. He walked up to the Hokage monument where he knew Akira was, even though he didn't know how he knew. He saw her sitting, looking over the village. You have quite the imagination and memory, Naruto-kun. Save a few houses, this place is an exact replica, she said. You know why I'm here, Naruto stated. Yes, but why should I tell you? I have barely seen you in over a year, she said with a bit of anger. Maybe that's because every time I come here, you're asleep, he said with a sweat drop running down his face. Akira just huffed at this. If you're that desperate for company, then why not just set up a mental link between us, Naruto said. Akira could hear the obvious tone as his voice and blushed slightly, having not thought of it. Her quietness was an obvious answer to Naruto. Back to the important subject. Is it possible? He asked. Yes, but the amount of pain that is required to perform it is excruciating. Thankfully, this is the only sacrifice to be given, Akira answered. How do I perform it? Naruto asked, slightly relieved. Since Orochimaru knows a lot about anatomy, you can ask him where these points are, Akira said as Naruto nodded. First you need to tie the person down to something that's reinforced with chakra, Mokutan being the best choice. Then you need to gather the chakra of the bloodline in either each hand or by combining the two elements that make it, making sure that your hand is fully extended. Then ram your fingertips into the solar plexus. This is to soften the pain of the next part, she said, making Naruto wince at the thought of doing this. The next part is dangerous, but since you can revive people, it's just more pain. Next you are to make a small incision right over the heart, small as in not deep, you do need to make it wide though. Then once again channel the chakra into your hands, only this time make a sort of fist and bring it above your head and bring it down fast where the incision was made and keep forcing pressure on it. Have someone start rubbing their hands together while channeling lightning chakra through them. Once you hear sparks coming from them, lift your hands and tell the person to shock the other. Then just give them about 5 minutes to regain consciousness, she said, making Naruto wince again. This has rarely been done because even though you get the said Kekkei Genkai out of it, it would stop anyone doing it again. Even Kami-chan had been through it once and she never done it again. It's that painful, and as such, not many know of it, Akira explained to him. And what about Dujutsu? Naruto asked. Activate the Dujutsu and then channel normal chakra. The chakra that goes past the Dujutsu will pick up on its features and travel to your hands, Akira explained. How frequently can this be used? Naruto asked, surprising Akira. Once a month, just enough time to give the body time to recover and rest, she said. Thanks, Akira-chan. By the way, don't forget the mental link again, Naruto said, making her blush furiously as he turned around. Real world. Naruto became conscious again and started to move, making everyone look towards him. Well? Tsunade asked hopefully. There is a solution, but you're not going to like it, he said before explaining the horrible procedure to them. I can understand why. Doing this would make any man want to just drop dead, Orochimaru said. So who wants to go first? Naruto asked almost sarcastically. Orochimaru, Jiraiya and Tsunade looked at each other before Jiraiya sighed and stepped forward. I'll do it, he said. Naruto nodded. We should probably get to a more suitable environment, he said. They then left for the medical room. Once inside it, Naruto created a table from his Mokutan and put metal braces on it for Jiraiya's hands, feet, body and head, even though the table was more of a pedestal, and then place a silencing barrier on the room. Jiraiya looked like a nervous wreck as he got on the table and was strapped down. Naruto started channeling chakra for the Yoden to his hands. As soon as he started, Jiraiya's face started to scrunch up as he let out a howl of pain which made even Hashirama wince at. When he began the second part, he had to cover his outer ear in chakra to not hear the sudden shriek that came from him, but not before telling Tsunade to charge her lightning chakra. When he released the chakra, Jiraiya was begging him to stop. He heard Tsunade's hands spark. Now, he yelled at Tsunade. Tsunade dropped her hands right over where Jiraiya's heart was and his whole body shook. When everything calmed down, Jiraiya was unconscious but alive. Naruto activated his Rinnegan and looked at Jiraiya. Well, it worked, he said, relieved. Everyone else in the room visibly sighed. Jiraiya started to stir after a few minutes, and the first thing he said was, "Did it work?" His voice was hoarse from the lightning chakra, but he didn't take notice as his whole body was numb from pain. Yeah, Naruto said, smiling slightly. But for now just rest, Naruto said as he released the metal restraints holding him down. After another blood-curdling scream, from Orochimaru after his own operation, Naruto could see that Tsunade was nervous. With Hashirama gone to make sure Jiraiya and Orochimaru were alright and Tobirama and Hiruzen gone back to doing their duties so they don't pile up, he and Naruto were alone with no adult, something that made her nervous. Naruto saw this and held her hand again. It always seemed to calm her down, so why do anything else? Hey, it'll be alright after, he said. This seemed to gain her confidence as she gave him a shy smile. She got on the table and was strapped in. Naruto created a cage bushin before once again performing the surgery. Tsunade started to scream just like Jiraiya and Orochimaru. What Tsunade didn't know was that Naruto was using a special chakra on her, the Shoten. When Naruto heard the sparks and took his hands away and his clone shocked her. He was surprised to see her eyes open almost immediately. But there was something that shocked him even more. Tsunade's eyes were not her own. Rich brown eyes had turned to a color that made Naruto's heart stop. Her eyes were a metallic purple, with 4 concentric rings around her pupil. Well, this is unexpected, a voice said in his head. You call this unexpected? Shit, this is both cool and strange at once, Naruto thought to Akira. Tsunade saw Naruto's face and got worried. Is everything alright? She said in her pain. Naruto looked at her, snapping out of his daze. Yeah, better than expected, he said softly. Tsunade looked really confused by this, but as Naruto said that, Hashirama walked in. Well, he asked. Maybe you should look for yourself, Naruto said. Hashirama looked confused. He couldn't see chakra, so why would Naruto ask this? As soon as he saw his granddaughter's eyes, he gasped. Tsunade was getting nervous. All she could think was, had something gone wrong? How is this possible? Hashirama asked Naruto. Don't know, it could come from your wife, but that would be my best guess, Naruto replied. Hello, I'm still here, Tsunade said. The two looked at Tsunade in thought. Sorry Tsunade-chan, but until we can figure this out, you'll have to. He trailed off as he remembered something. Flashback. Naruto was walking back to Tsunade after his training session with him. He could see that she was looking through a book that had to do with blood and bloodlines but ignored it. Tsunade looked up to him and smiled. Hey Naruto-kun, do you mind if I get a blood sample from you? It's for an experiment I want to try. I need several different samples, so if I get yours I won't have to get too many to keep track of, she said. Naruto was slightly confused but complied and let her put a syringe in his arm to extract the blood. Strangely enough, she looked slightly nervous, but he had ignored that too. Thanks Naruto-kun, she said before walking away, her legs shaking slightly as though she had done something she shouldn't have. End flashback. Naruto's face described quite a few different looks. Shock, worry and confusion, just to name a few. Tsunade-chan, that syringe of blood you got from me, did you inject it into yourself? He said as she sat up. No, she answered nervously. Naruto looked at her sternly. She sighed before replying, yes. Tsunade-chan, you know you could have killed yourself, only our blood is compatible, Naruto said, almost like scolding parent. Tsunade looked down and almost seemed to pout. Naruto sighed in defeat. She's damn well lucky she didn't get herself killed, he thought. Just go and get some rest, he said in his frustration. He looked toward where Tsunade was leaving and rubbed his temples. Of all the stupid things she could have done with it, he spoke to himself. Hashirama looked at him confused. Exactly how could she have died from your blood, he asked. Well, as you know, with civilians and their blood types, if you inject the wrong type it would cause problems. With shinobi with bloodlines, however, if the blood isn't compatible with the person, it could kill them if they suffer anything much more than a small cut, he explained, making Hashirama's eyes widen. So you mean that she's been in danger of dying since a few days before we left for the mission, Hashirama said. Yeah, she's lucky our bloods are compatible, otherwise we'd be having an early funeral for her, Naruto said with a sigh. So what shall you do now? Hashirama asked him. Naruto sighed. I'll help them train with their new Kekkei Genkai. As for Tsunade having the Rinnegan, I don't know, he said, sighing again. You will have to teach her eventually. Knowing Tsunade, she'll probably try on her own and end up hurting herself, Hashirama said. I know, she's a handful when she tries to catch up to me, Naruto answered. Well, we might as well see how we're going to do this. We've got a long 5 months ahead of us, Naruto said. With that, the two walked out. 5 months later, Naruto was currently training with the rest of Team 7. Ever since they had received their Kekkei Genkai, Naruto had pummeled them into the ground with training. He didn't want Orochimaru and Jiraiya to fall behind, so he doubled their training to the point that they collapsed from either chakra exhaustion or their injuries, whichever came first. They had improved dramatically over the past 5 months, both now bordering S rank. At first Naruto had refused to train Tsunade to use her Rinnegan, but after a month of calming himself down he complied. He needed to make sure they were ready for the exams. They may have had skill, but they severely lacked experience. The three were fighting all out against him, and while they could overwhelm him a couple of times, he somehow managed to just get away each time. Come on guys, you were doing great earlier, Naruto said. That was pant over pant, 3 hours ago, Jiraiya managed to say between pants. Is Jiraiya-chan getting tired? Naruto teased. Well, it's not our fault that you're a stamina monster, Jiraiya yelled back. Well then, would you like to go a little longer? I'm sure another few hours won't do any harm, Naruto said. Jiraiya paled while Orochimaru and Tsunade glared at him. Naruto chuckled at the sight. Alright, come on. We'll finish up for today, the exams are tomorrow, Naruto said. He heard 3 sighs of relief as soon as he said that. HMPH, and I thought we'd never have to see the academy again, Jiraiya said, slightly depressed. Just be glad that we have to be there for 9 and not 8, Orochimaru said, chuckling. Just remember to wake up in the morning, Tsunade teased. Naruto grinned at this. Finally, someone besides me gets it for punctuality, he thought happily. Jiraiya stuck his tongue out at her childishly. Well, how about this then? If the two of you aren't there an hour early, I'll come and get you myself, Tsunade said with a sickly sweet smile. Jiraiya gulped and Orochimaru started to sweat. See you two tomorrow, Naruto said, but Orochimaru and Jiraiya had already left. Naruto's forehead had a sweat drop on it. They're really terrified of you, he said, turning to Tsunade. Tsunade pouted and said, well, it's not my fault, they're only on time. And it's not their fault you're so early to everything, Naruto said, chuckling. Tsunade pouted again before regaining a serious look. Gigi wants to see me in the morning, he wants you to come with me, a half hour early. I have a feeling that it's not going to be good, she said, staring at the ground. Naruto's face hardened as he knew what Hashirama would tell her and felt sad for her. But if she doesn't hear it now, she probably never will, he thought. He put on his best fake smile. It's probably nothing. Come on, let's go, he said. The next morning, Naruto was walking to the academy, his mind set on what would transpire with this little talk Hashirama was going to give Tsunade. The sun was barely rising over the sky, giving it a red tint. He sighed in frustration. She's not going to like this, he mumbled to himself. But the burden of one will be held by many, he heard a voice in his head say. Doesn't mean it'll be any easier for her Akira-chan, he thought to the Biju. At least she'll get to hear it from him and not his brother, Akira assured. Naruto sighed. You always have something to add, don't you? He thought to her. But of course Naruto-kun, Akira teased. Naruto looked up as he found himself looking at Tsunade looking worried outside the academy with her grandfather. Hashirama looked at Naruto and Naruto immediately knew why he would be needed. He wasn't just going to tell her about him, he was going to tell her everything. Hashirama sighed. Good morning Naruto, he said causing Tsunade to look up. Whatever news her grandfather had to tell her was going to end in tears and she knew it. Hashirama sighed once again. Tsunade, you may or may not know, but we are on the brink of a war between the shinobi nations, he started. Tsunade nodded signaling for him to continue as Naruto stood beside her. I'm afraid to tell you this but, I'm not going to live to see the end of it, he said with tears in his eyes. At first Tsunade didn't react, so he took the opportunity to continue. Whether it be from battle or old age, I'm going to die before this war is over, Tobirama won't be far behind either, he said kneeling down to her height. By now Tsunade's eyes were threatening to overflow with tears. I'm telling you this because I don't want you to get depressed, I don't want you to become that kind of person just because of my death, he said hugging her. Tsunade was now openly crying as her grandfather hugged her. Naruto had also come to her side and squeezed her hand. Whether I die sooner or later doesn't matter, I will die before the bloodshed of war ends, please Tsunade-chan, stay strong, I know that my death shall affect you greatly but you still have many people to look after you, you have your mother, Saru-chan, Naruto-kun the most of all, you'll never truly be alone Tsunade-chan, Hashirama whispered into his granddaughter's ear so only she could hear. That was it for Tsunade as the floodgates were opened. Her tears had covered the shoulder of her grandfather by now, it was only when he explained to her what she would have left after he died did she start to calm down, though not by much. Naruto frowned as he wondered why Hashirama had chosen this day to do tell her. Then his eyes widened. So you really are that close, he thought looking at him sadly. Hashirama whispered once more only this time Tsunade had barely heard it. Both I and your ba-chan know how much you like Naruto-kun, he will help you through everything, you don't need to worry. Tsunade had stopped crying and smiled slightly, but blushed even more. Now, I believe you have an exam to get to, Hashirama said standing up. It was only now that both he and Naruto realized Tsunade was holding Naruto's hand even though he had let go. Tsunade and Naruto slowly made their way into the academy. Tsunade-chan, would you mind letting go of my hand? Naruto asked awkwardly. Tsunade blushed even more when she realized she was still holding his hand and let go. Naruto smiled and put his hand on her shoulder. Come on, otherwise we'll be late. As soon as he said this Tsunade grabbed his hand again and rushed to their room. Naruto smiled even more at this. Well, that's one problem solved, he thought as they arrived outside the room. Things will only get worse from here, she might as well enjoy herself, he thought as they arrived outside the exam room door. Naruto looked up as he saw the first team arrive to the exam room. Jiraiya and Orochimaru had gotten here about a half hour ago, both running for fear of Tsunade killing them. To say they were annoyed she wasn't even paying attention was an understatement because it meant that they could have stayed in bed longer. Naruto tensed as he saw that the team that entered were glaring at him and his team. Back in this time, it wasn't uncommon to have young children in the Chunin exams as it usually meant that they were strong, depending on how old they were, so to see 5 and 6-year-olds in the Chunin exams would make anyone wary. Naruto took note at their Hitai 8. They're from Kumo, he thought warily as they seemed to be whispering to each other. What are they talking about? Tsunade whispered, not looking towards them. I don't know, that's what worries me, Naruto answered. He looked to his left to see Orochimaru and Jiraiya trying to pass the time. The door opened and another 2 teams came in. The team from Kumo released Ki to try and intimidate the teams, but Naruto just released his own and made the Kumo team collapse to their knees, except for the girl, about Tsunade's age, who was sweating, but other than that she didn't seem fazed. The other 2 teams seemed to look at him thankfully but then stared at him in slight fear, as though they had realized who he was. Naruto saw that their Hitai 8 was for Kiri. He could only imagine the stories of the Battle of Wave that they had heard. He stifled a chuckle as he realized that they were scared of a 6-year-old. Talk about paranoid, even if it was him. Within an hour the room was packed with at least 50 teams from all over the shinobi nations, and each village had their own reactions to seeing him. Kumo glared. Kiri gave him the odd glance and seemed to be slightly trembling. Iwa and Suna were making sure they kept an eye on them, and other than Taki, who stared in awe, any other team from the minor villages looked about ready to piss themselves. He shifted his eyes to the left and Tsunade seemed to be meditating to try and get away from the stares, even if there was some chatter among the other teams. Jiraiya was reading, which surprised Naruto, while Orochimaru had taken out a leaf to practice his chakra control. A large man walked into the classroom. Everyone, sit down now and shut up, he said, even though there was only whispers through the room. Everyone sat down, some still glared at him. Each of you will be given a sheet of paper, do not turn it over until I say so, he said as 5 Chunin started handing out the pieces of paper. Naruto could see that Tsunade had as clear a view of him as he did her. Jiraiya and Orochimaru were sitting a few seats behind him and could see him and Tsunade clearly. He smirked. Looks like teaching them Anbu code paid off, he thought. While the Chunin give the tests out, I will explain a few rules. First off, if you're caught cheating 5 times, you and your team are out of the exams. There are also 9 questions on the sheet. I'll give you the last one at the end. Each person starts out with 10 points. For each question they get wrong, 2 points are deducted, and to pass, your team needs the same amount of points as it has people. Any questions? He said. No one put their hands up. No. Then you may begin. You have 1 hour, he said. The sound of paper crinkling was heard through the classroom as well as a few gulps. Naruto smirked as he answered the first question and made a series of hand signs to his team. Team 3 of Suna, leave now, one of the Chunin said. 3 sighs were heard as the first team left. A few more gulps were heard. Not 30 seconds in and the first team was sent out. Naruto smirked as he continued to answer the questions before sending a code to his teammates. He heard the rhythm of a pencil bouncing off a desk and sighed as he repeated one of the codes. Probably Jiraiya, he thought. By the time he had finished, there was only 10 minutes gone. He turned his page over so any other idiot didn't try and copy his answers. Team 5 of Kiri and Team 8 of Taki are to leave now, another Chunin said. Everyone is too cautious, nearly no one is actually trying to cheat, he thought, looking around with his eyes as he leaned back. He saw that Tsunade had done the same and felt several eyes on the both of them. Deciding it was too much of an effort to wait until the 50 minutes were up, he went to his mindscape. Naruto's mindscape. Naruto opened his eyes and found himself near the center of the Konoha inside his head as an 18-year-old. People were all walking around, minding their own business, and a few waved at him. Naruto-kun, what are you doing here? Akira asked. The Chunin exams were way too easy this time. There's still 50 minutes left. You seem to be enjoying yourself, he said, noticing the bottle of sake in her hand. Everything in here is real, you know. The people are just what you remember of them, but they act exactly like they do in real life, almost like you made a copy of them without knowing the details. The human mind really is a wondrous thing, Akira said while looking up to the 3-faced Hokage mountain. Naruto's mouth was slightly agape. The people here were the same as the ones he remembered seeing in real life, and his mind had created carbon copies in both appearance and personality without knowing the latter. It blew his mind because he basically had a mini village in his head. So what are you going to be teaching Tsunade? With the Rinnegan I mean, Akira asked. She shouldn't even have the damn thing. She's lucky to be alive, Naruto said. Doesn't mean that she shouldn't be trained to use it now that she does have it, Akira said. I'll show her how to use a few of the weaker techniques, even if they're still powerful to the point of being a god, Naruto said with a sigh. Akira chuckled. Oh come on Naruto-kun, she's already convincing you to train her. She just doesn't want to be as helpless as she was when you first saved her, Akira said. Naruto sighed. I know that, but her childishness will get her killed if she's not careful, and I speak from experience, Naruto said. Akira looked at Naruto sadly as she knew what he said was true and add his continuous worry for her. It was heart-wrenching for her to see him worry about the girl. Don't worry Naruto-kun, she'll be alright, she whispered as she pulled him into a hug. Naruto smiled at this. Since meeting her, Akira had become more like a caring older sister figure to him and he had even grown to love her like so, though he managed to keep it hidden from her. Akira held him tightly for a few moments before letting go. You had better get back soon Naruto-kun, there's only 5 minutes left for the test, Akira said. That was fast, Naruto said. Well, time isn't always what it seems in your mindscape, you wanted at least 40 minutes to go by when you came here, that's exactly what has happened, Akira said. Goodbye Naruto-kun, she said before Naruto's vision of her went black. The real world. Naruto opened his eyes and looked around him. There were probably only 30 teams left from the original 50. He saw that Tsunade was trying to entertain herself by playing with her pencil. Jiraiya's head was against the desk as he let out a light snore every now and then and Orochimaru, who had put a genjutsu over himself, was reading a book that Naruto couldn't identify. Pencils down, the main proctor said. Before I give you the last question, there are a few rules to tell you, he said gaining a few groans from the genin. Firstly, if you don't want to take the question you can leave, but if you do take it and get it wrong, you are banned from taking the Chunin exams for 4 years, he said with a smirk as nearly the whole room started shouting in complaint. His smirk faded when he noticed Naruto and his team weren't even fazed by this. After quietening them down, teams began to pour out until there was only 17 teams left. He waited for a few moments to see if anyone else would get up before speaking up again. If no one else wants to leave, you all pass, he said. As he explained what a Chunin was expected to do, the faces of the remaining team cells were bright and, well, happy. The proctor looked at Naruto and saw him smirk. So the kid figured it out, not bad, he thought. Before you move on to the next exam, I might as well explain one more thing. The ways that you cheated, they were easily detected. I only saw 5 people cheating in a way that wouldn't be detectable in battle. You should think about improving it, he said before leaving as another man entered. Hello everyone, meet me at Training Ground 44 in 20 minutes and I shall explain there, the man said before leaving. Naruto smirked at hearing Training Ground 44. What's up with you? Jiraiya asked. Training Ground 44, better known as the Forest of Death, Naruto replied just loud enough for a few other genin to hear. Jiraiya paled. You're just saying that to scare the other teams, right? He asked. No, was Naruto's reply. Training Ground 44 aka Forest of Death. The remaining teams had arrived at Training Ground 44. They looked slightly shaken from what they saw. Besides Team 7, excluding Jiraiya, the only person that wasn't intimidated was the girl from the Kumo team. Alright, listen up, you're going to get a scroll, half will get a heaven scroll, the other half will get an earth scroll. You have 5 days to take a scroll from another team and make it to the tower, he said pointing towards a tower a couple of kilometers away. You will be given a number and your team are to go to the gate with the same number, there you shall receive your scroll. Any questions, he said. When no one put their hand up, he started handing out pieces of paper. Naruto unfolded his piece. Number 3, he said to his teammates. Team 7 then proceeded to walk towards Gate 3, and when they got there was a tall, lanky man standing next to a table. Before I give you your scroll, sign here. It's a warrant saying that we are not responsible for any injuries or fatalities that might occur, he said. Team 7 signed it, though Jiraiya was slightly hesitant. After they received the Earth Scroll, they were told to go straight in. They ran for roughly 5 minutes before stopping in clearing. Now, how are we going to do this? Tsunade asked. This forest is 8 miles long, the other teams could be anywhere, Orochimaru said. So how do we find them? Jiraiya asked. We don't. They've already found us, Naruto said before throwing a shuriken towards a tree. The tree seemed to rustle just before the shuriken hit it. HMPH, the kid's good, an excited voice said. But not good enough, another deeper voice said. A Fuma shuriken burst from the trees. And Naruto caught it. Hey, so he's not that good as he doesn't even look scared, he looks almost bored, a deep but level voice called out. Naruto threw the Fuma shuriken to his left. Haha, he nearly got me, the excited voice said. Alright, I have had enough of this, Naruto thought. Kaden. Goka Mekyaku, he said, and a giant wall of flames destroyed most of the trees in the clearing. Holy shit, that was close, the excited voice yelled. Let's move in, he's bound to be tired after that, the level voice said. Through the smoke, Naruto could see 3 silhouettes. Naruto gestured for his team to hide. Hey, looks like your team has abandoned you, kid, the deep voice said as the team's appearance became clear. The deep voice came from a big, bulky guy who looked about 13. It just means easy pickings for us, the excited voice, a guy who was hunched over slightly and dressed eerily like Naruto did in his original timeline, said. Naruto withdrew one of his swords. What? Too afraid to speak, kid, the bulky boy said. Naruto remained silent. He saw the level-headed boy reach into his pouch and threw a kunai at him. Naruto burst into a flock of crows. What the hell was that? The hunched boy asked. Genjutsu, the level-headed boy said. HMPH, I'm surprised you figured it out, you're the first that figured it out and still lives, Naruto said, his voice ringing through the air. I'll just have to change that, Naruto continued. The hunched boy fell to the ground with a sword lodged in his throat. Hey, come out and fight, coward, the big bulky kid said. Naruto suddenly appeared in front of him and used the inhuman strength that Tsunade taught him to send the boy flying. The level-headed boy turned to attack him but made one small but fatal mistake. He looked into Naruto's eyes. Tsukuyomi, Naruto said. A few seconds later the boy fell to the ground screaming and slit his own throat. Naruto sighed as he deactivated his Mangekyo Rinnegan. He bent down and picked up the boy's scroll, and just his luck, a heaven scroll. Alright guys, you can come down now, he said as he sheathed his sword. Team 7 then continued their way towards the Chunin Tower, meeting a couple of more arrogant teams along the way. There was just one downside to getting there early. Waiting for everyone else. 5 days later, after 5 days of waiting, the other teams had finally arrived. Naruto didn't let his team just lie around and created 2 blood clones. He had them train Jiraiya and Orochimaru while he trained Tsunade. To say that they were tired would be an understatement, so Naruto decided to give them a break every couple of hours. When the second exam was officially over, Team 7 made their way to the arena. Naruto could see that there was only 8 teams left, which only consisted of teams from the major villages. Up on the balcony, Hiruzen Sarutobi stepped up to make an announcement. Welcome all, you have survived the second test, but now is where the challenge is. The Chunin exams are not just for graduating to the next level, but are also to improve a village's prestige with the daimyos and other nations. The better your performance in the final stage, the more clients your village gets, as well as any potential enemies giving a second thought to attacking, he explained to the genin. However, I'm afraid to tell you that there are too many of you here, therefore, we must hold these preliminaries to narrow down the numbers. If anyone wishes to drop out can do so now as your choice no longer affects your teammates, Hiruzen said. Several people dropped out, until there was only 20 people left. Now that no one else is going to drop out, we can begin, he said. A woman stepped out from behind him and jumped down to the arena floor. Hello, my name is Keiko and I am your proctor for the third exam. First match will be Kyoto of Kumo vs. Masahiko of Suna. Everyone else go up to the balcony, Keiko said. Ready, Hajime, she said before jumping back up to the balcony. How about you just give up and I'll treat you to something you'll really enjoy, Masahiko said with a smirk. Why? Because you're afraid to lose, Kyoto said in a stoic tone. Masahiko, in his arrogance, snarled and said, I'll show you, bitch. He charged her at Chunin level speeds. Naruto smirked as he realized just who the girl was. The reason that she didn't drop from his ki. This girl was Kyoto no Enten, the girl who created the Blaze release which led to her being the third kunoichi to reach S rank in the bingo book as most others were either killed, settled into family life or didn't go past mid-A rank. He knew that this fight was already over when Masahiko charged at her. Kyoto drew a kunai and plunged it into Masahiko's heart at such speeds that only Team 7, the Jonin present and Sarutobi could see. Winner. Kyoto, Keiko said. Who's she? Tsunade asked him. That's Tsunade-chan, is Kyoto. A little rumor going around is that she is quite the expert at nature transformation, she even created the Enten, Naruto said. I've never heard of it, Tsunade said. It's a combination of Raiden and Kaden nature affinities, Naruto explained to her. Amazing, Tsunade said. Naruto smirked. She's still in Kumo and she hasn't changed her name yet, she's even born earlier. Let's see what you got this time round, Pakura, he thought looking down at the green-brown-haired girl. Next match, Jiraiya of Konoha vs. Iwao of Iwa, Keiko said. Jiraiya jumped down and was met with an intimidating boy who looked to be in his late teens. Hey, this'll be easy pickings, Iwao said. Jiraiya gulped and fell into a taijutsu stance. Ready, Hajime, Keiko said. Iwao charged Jiraiya with kunai in hand. Jiraiya barely had time to jump out of the way. Damn it. Get back here, Iwao said. Jiraiya instead took out a kunai with a tag at the end and threw it at him. It blew up when Iwao caught it. When the smoke cleared, Iwao was covered in oil. You little shit, Iwao said with visible rage. Jiraiya rubbed the back of his head. Oops, wrong tag, he said chuckling nervously. I'm going to kill you for that, Iwao shouted at the top of his lungs as he charged Jiraiya, ready to take his head off. Jiraiya jumped to the side just before he was hit and threw another tag at Iwao, igniting him on fire. Iwao screamed in pain as he gave up and was put out by Keiko. Winner, Jiraiya, she said after giving Iwao to a couple of medical nin. Naruto looked at Jiraiya as he stood next to them once more. You deceptive idiot, he said chuckling to himself. Jiraiya rubbed the back of his head and chuckled slightly. Next match, Orochimaru of Konoha vs. Tatsumaka Minori of Konoha, Keiko said. Proctor-san, I concede, I'm not strong enough to fight Orochimaru, Minori said as soon as Keiko said her name. Keiko nodded. Winner by default, Orochimaru, she said. Lucky Tem, Jiraiya said to Orochimaru. Next match, Senju Tsunade of Konoha vs. Hyuga Ryu of Konoha, Keiko said. When Tsunade jumped down, she was met with a glare that could pierce the soul as Ryu had already activated his Byakugan. Ready, Hajime, Keiko said as she jumped back. Not a second later, Tsunade brought her hand up to her face as she blocked a strike that would have hit her right between her eyes. She jumped back to avoid being hit, but Ryu kept coming as he hit both her arms in several different places before jumping back. When Tsunade tried to move her arms, she found she couldn't, but before she could channel Kyuubi's chakra to them, Ryu laughed. I've hit the Tenketsu points in your arm, They are now useless to you now, just give up, he said with a grin that screamed of arrogance. Tsunade smirked as she channeled the Kyuubi's chakra to her arms. Ryu's face suddenly turned to confusion, and then to horror as Tsunade moved her arms with ease. That's not exactly the hardest problem to solve, but just to take your stupid pride down, I won't use my arms, she said as she put her arms behind her back. Ryu smirked at her seemingly stupid decision. Tsunade channeled chakra to her legs and jumped as high as the balcony before coming down to the ground with her inhuman strength. Ryu barely had time to jump away, and when he did, he got hit by the debris from the crater that Tsunade had made with her foot. Almost everyone was shocked of the pure and raw power behind the destruction of the floor to the chakra that was visibly surrounding her leg. When the dust cleared, Ryu was unconscious with a large stone next to him. Keiko jumped down from the balcony, still in shock at what she had just witnessed. Winner. Tease Tsunade, she said, stuttering slightly. Tsunade jumped back up to the balcony and stood next to Naruto, who was holding his temples and silently laughing. Next match, Uchiha Masaru of Konoha vs. Kudamaru of Kiri, Keiko said. Ready, Hajime, Keiko said. Masaru activated his Sharingan and 3 Tomo could be seen in each eye as he charged Kudamaru. They locked themselves in a taijutsu battle and stayed locked in it for several minutes before Masaru gained the upper hand and managed to catch Kudamaru on the chin. Winner, Uchiha Masaru, Keiko said. After a half-hour, Naruto was the only genin from Konoha who still hadn't fought, and the person he was fighting shocked him greatly. The final fight will be Uzumaki Naruto of Konoha vs. Gari of Iowa, Keiko said. Bakuten no Gari, one of the most revered men in his time, was now before him. Ready, Hajime, Keiko said. Gari and Naruto didn't move for a second, seemingly studying each other before the two ran at each other. Naruto knew that he couldn't get too close as he would have to show his speed, so instead he settled for mid-range combat. Futon. Kami Oroshi, Naruto said as he forced a wind strong enough to stop Gari and make his sight on him go blurry. Naruto took this chance to cast 2 genjutsu before making another set of hand signs. Sweden. Hahenryu, he said, and a small torrent of water was launched from his hand. Doden. Koka, Gari said, and just before he was hit, a mass of earth burst up and covered his body. The earth dispersed from his body and he was panting slightly. Naruto grinned slightly. At first Gari was confused. His eyes then widened. Too late, a voice behind him said. Gari turned around, only to be punched in the face. On the ground, he looked to where Naruto was before he turned around. The Naruto that was there began to disappear in a distortion of the air around him. In a desperate attempt to get away, Gari threw an explosive tag at Naruto, who didn't even move as the tag blew up. At first Gari was confused as to why Naruto didn't move, but when he felt metal against his throat he knew what had happened. A double illusion, he whispered. Correct. Now concede, Naruto whispered back. When Gari conceded and Keiko announced his victory, most of the remaining Iowa genin were looking on in shock. That was fun, Naruto said to himself as he went back up to the balcony. He could feel the stares on him and inwardly smirked while keeping a stoic look. Keiko then nodded to a pair of chunin who came down holding a box. Alright everyone, listen up. Each of you will come down here, one at a time, and pick a number from the box. Show it to me and I shall tell you what match number you'll be fighting in. Don't ask me who your opponent is because I won't tell you, she said. First up is Uzumaki Naruto, Keiko said. Naruto sighed and jumped back down. He picked out a number and showed it to Keiko. Match 1, she whispered into his ear. This process continued till no one was left. Now that everyone has their matches, you have 1 month to train for the next exam. Goodbye, Hiruzen said. When everyone left and Team 7 were out of range of the other genin, Jiraiya turned to Naruto. If we already have to fight others, how will we fight the Jonin? He asked. Naruto looked at him. Only one way to do it. Finish our fights quickly enough so we are ready but slowly enough to entertain the daimyo, Naruto said. The morning after the last chapter, Naruto woke up in a daze. He stumbled out of his bed and managed to make his way to the door. As soon as he opened the door, he was greeted with the sound of loud crying. It had become a regularity in the last few months as the twins started to get fussy. He thought of the pure luck at the fact that Tsukiko had named her daughter Amaterasu, and yet he could already tell that the girl had an extremely high affinity for fire. Tsukiko had been depressed lately as her boyfriend, Akihiro, had been announced as Kia after a mission gone wrong, and let's just say that his body wasn't something to look at when it arrived. Katsuro on the other hand gained a strong affinity for Earth. The twins' affinities had started to reflect their personalities in very few but noticeable ways. Katsuro was always hurting himself when he tried to walk, but never even seemed fazed as he got back up and stubbornly repeated the process. Amaterasu on the other hand had a more happy-go-lucky personality and always tried to think about it before doing it, even if it was only placing blocks in holes. Even with all of this, Naruto still didn't know of Anko having an aunt or uncle and simply thought that something happened to one of them. Tsukiko seemed more tired lately. Between working with her children and her job, it must have put a lot of stress on the woman. Naruto didn't like to say it aloud, but he worried for her. The woman was running herself into the ground and she didn't have too much to show for it. "Good morning, Naruto," Tsukiko said, trying to hide her depression. Naruto sighed. "You're not very good at hiding your emotions," he told her. Tsukiko frowned. "You need to take a break before you kill yourself from working. Take a holiday, the hospital is likely to understand," he said as he got himself cereal. "I'm not overworking myself," Tsukiko said in denial. Naruto looked at her straight in the eye. "Yes, you are, it shows so much that I heard a few nurses, that I know you don't know, talking about it, you can't do everything," he said to her softly. Tsukiko looked ready to let the floodgates go as she started to shake. "Well, I can't, okay. With Akihiro here I was earning enough to keep my children going. Now that he's dead I have to work double time just to stay alive for the month, just to be able to support my kids," she said with an angry sigh as tears ran down her face and onto the floor. Naruto felt his heart wrench. He disappeared from the room for a minute, returning fully dressed and holding a scroll. "If money's the problem, I have more than enough to help you," he said, glad that he had taken a few solo S-rank missions but a bit saddened that he hadn't used it earlier. He channeled his chakra into one of the seals on the scroll and 4 huge pouches came out. "There, 4 million ryo, enough to keep you going for half a year," he said to the shock of Tsukiko. "Now, any other excuses for not taking holidays that I can't solve," Naruto said smiling at his surrogate sister. As soon as he finished he was enveloped in a bone-crushing hug from Tsukiko, who was crying into his shoulder muttering thank you over and over. Naruto was a little bewildered to say the least, and just hugged her back, not knowing what else to do. After 5 minutes of just hugging him, Tsukiko let go. Her eyes were red and puffy and she was sniffling slightly. "Well, I gotta go, see you later Tsukiko ne," he said smiling. He left, leaving Tsukiko with a shocked look on her face. She then smiled. "Tsukiko ne, I could get used to that," she said to herself before sighing as she heard the twins crying. With Naruto was walking towards Tsunade's house smiling. His surrogate sister was finally taking a break and this meant she would grow happier. He had told Tsunade, before the exams he would be coming over to her clan's compound to train her today. Her clan compound, while large, only held 6 people: Hashirama, Tobirama, Tsunade's mother Moriko, Mito, Tsunade herself and Nawaki. He had wondered what Mito and Moriko would be like when he first heard Tsunade talking about them during one of her training sessions. He was so caught up in his thoughts that he never realized he had arrived at the Senju compound. "Good morning Naruto," Hashirama said, making Naruto come out of his thoughts. "Oh, good morning," Naruto said, mildly surprised to see the man outside his office. "Tsunade's in the training ground with Mito-chan," Hashirama said before continuing his business. Naruto nodded and went toward the training ground to see Mito teaching Tsunade about Fuinjutsu. Good morning, you must be Naruto, Mito said, not looking up from the seal Tsunade was intently trying to draw. With trying being the important word as not a second later she went flying back from a failed explosive tag. Naruto chuckled slightly at the sight. Damn it, what the hell am I doing wrong? Tsunade said in frustration. Naruto looked at the seal she was trying to draw and the paper she was using laughed. Tsunade-chan, it might help to release the genjutsu over the seal you're drawing, he said still laughing. Tsunade looked confused, but when she looked at the paper itself instead of the brush, she blushed at how weak the genjutsu was. She looked up to her grandmother with a pout. Mito was smiling at her and chuckling. That's not fair, Tsunade said, her pout growing larger. Of course it's fair Tsunade-chan, it's not my fault you were too enthusiastic about learning Fuinjutsu, Mito said. Mito then turned to Naruto. Well Naruto, I hear from Hashi-kun that you aren't too bad at Fuinjutsu, she said. An Uzumaki level 6 inches Naruto said. Impressive, Mito said, genuinely surprised. Tsunade on the other hand was confused, thus Mito decided to explain. Uzumaki levels are different to normal levels when it comes to Fuinjutsu. Naruto being a level 6 on Uzumaki terms would make him go higher than a level 10 under normal terms. One Uzumaki level is at least 3 normal levels, well beyond level 10 inches the elderly woman said. The look on Tsunade's face almost made Naruto laugh. Well Tsunade-chan I'm afraid that's all I can give you for today, plus I'm sure Naruto-kun has something to teach you, Mito said with a smile on her face as she left. Naruto looked at the woman strangely as she left, it was almost as if she knew. Naruto turned back to Tsunade. Why don't we get started? He said to her. What are we doing? Tsunade asked. Oh, you'll see, Naruto said with a mischievous smirk on his face. Nearly 1 month later, Naruto was smirking as Tsunade fell over for the millionth time this month. He had increased her weights to 600 pounds, gradually of course, per limb. She could barely keep herself up without falling after a few hours of fighting. Unbeknownst to her, he had sent 2 blood clones to do the same with Jiraiya and Orochimaru, the only difference being they had 500 pounds. What was even worse, in Tsunade's case anyway, was that he made her spar him with the weights on. He hadn't told the 3, but as soon as they came back from Wave Country, he had slowly increased his weights to 750 pounds and now was able to hold himself upright and still go about his daily life. Most would say that they were ruining their bodies and stunting their growth, but he had put special seals on the weights to prevent this from happening. The seals were of his own design and were the reason he was a level 6 in Uzumaki Fuinjutsu. He had always made sure to keep an eye on the date. While there were some events that he would not be allowed to prevent, such as the massacre of the Uzumaki clan, he could prevent other things like Naoki's death, he just had to be on time for them. He dodged one of Tsunade's punches and tripped her up again. Kami damn it, stop doing that, Tsunade shouted at him from the ground. Naruto was just glad that she was too tired to get up again. We're done for the day, you won't be able to get up again, he said as Tsunade made futile attempts to stand up. You lasted 3 hours before you grew fatigued enough to beat easily. As long as our fight doesn't go on for that ridiculous amount of time, we'll be alright, Naruto said as he helped her up and put one of her arms around his neck. You're a damn slave driver, Tsunade said. And you're a whiny brat, you wanted personal training and when you get it, you want to stop, Naruto retorted. I'm just wondering how Jiraiya and Orochimaru are going to feel about this, Tsunade muttered as Naruto put her down on her now Mokutan wood reinforced bed. You don't really think I'd leave them all for you, they've been going through the same training you have for the past month, just more to their own abilities, Naruto said as he started helping Kurama heal Tsunade. Tsunade had started visiting the fox more and more often, and now she was as close to the fox as he was to him in his time. Granted that Kurama was more of a brother to her now, he still didn't show it too much, still messing with her chakra during her training. There, that should do it, Naruto said as he lifted Tsunade back off her bed. Why the hell are you doing this to us? What the hell did we do? Tsunade asked as she readjusted herself to her weights. Now that my dear Su-chan is a secret, Naruto said with a smile as Tsunade blushed at the nickname. Well, I had better go. Good night, Naruto said. Tsunade looked at him in shock before looking out the window and seeing the sun had nearly set. I only said that you'd go 3 hours before getting fatigued. We were fighting for twice as long, Naruto said before leaving. Tsunade, still in shock, never noticed her grandmother enter her room. He'll be the one for her, Mito thought before leaving her granddaughter to her thoughts. The day of the Chunin exam finals. Naruto got up and got dressed in a rush. He was hoping to get to the arena early to see Hashirama. As soon as he got outside his bedroom door, the screaming of his surrogate nephew could be heard throughout the house. He made his way downstairs to see Tsukiko, looking better than she had since he first came here, holding Katsuro as she fed him. Katsuro had purple hair with blonde tints at the very end, and even though it was hard to see since he was still so young, Naruto could see that he was the spitting image of Akihiro. Amaterasu on the other hand was the spitting image of her mother, just with purple hair. The twins were almost complete opposites when it came to how they acted. Katsuro was your average loud and noisy child, while Amaterasu was a quiet and loving child. Naruto could only think that since they had been able to walk without support, they had become almost polar opposites, all within a month. Amaterasu almost reminded him of Hinata in how shy she could act, but when she wanted to, she could go act like he had in his childhood, which scared him a bit. He had become very attached to Amaterasu in the last month, and the little girl loved every second of the attention she got from him. Good morning, Naruto, Tsukiko said. The girl hadn't looked better in months. Morning, can't stop, gotta run, Naruto said as he grabbed a slice of toast from Tsukiko's plate. Tsukiko chuckled as she put down Katsuro and started feeding Amaterasu. Naruto was sprinting down to the arena by rooftop. He could see Hashirama in the distance, talking to someone. The closer he got to the two, the more dread he felt flow through him. The man he was talking to wasn't of any interest right now, but Naruto knew he had seen his face before, he just didn't know where. Good morning, Hashirama-sensei, Naruto said as he got within hearing distance. Both men turned to look at him. You're here early, Naruto-kun, is there something you need? Hashirama said, surprised to see Naruto earlier than Tsunade. Yes, but I can wait, Naruto said, gesturing towards the man Hashirama was with. No, that's alright, we're just finishing up, go to the cage box and I'll meet you there, Hashirama said. Naruto did as instructed and waited only for a few moments before Hashirama arrived. Well, what do you want to talk about? Hashirama asked him. I would like to know how we're going to work the fights out. We don't know who our first opponents are and we might be the unlucky ones to even go up against each other, Naruto said. While the daimyo would understand you giving up on fighting a teammate, I understand what you're saying. This is why I have decided to change it up a bit, because there are so many strong fighters, we would be wasting the daimyo's time to go all the way through, therefore you are only going to have one-on-one matchups instead of the tournament, Hashirama said. Naruto nodded before making his way down to the competitor's room. When he got there, he could see Tsunade was already there with Jiraiya and Orochimaru. Jiraiya was on the ground with a bloody and broken nose, Tsunade had her hand poised to hit him and Orochimaru just stood there and laughed. Just as Tsunade was about to hit Jiraiya again, Naruto cleared his throat. The three looked at him. We don't need the other teams to think we fight, fix his nose and get him cleaned up before the other competitors arrive, Naruto said sternly. Jiraiya looked like he was praying thanks to Naruto for saving him, until Tsunade forced his nose back into place, to which he let out a cry of agony. Tsunade was smiling when he looked up. She handed him a piece of cloth which he held to his nose while grumbling. I've been talking to Hashirama just now, and due to the amount of good fighters, we'll only have to fight one single match and then our special match for the daimyos, Naruto told them. Jiraiya seemed relieved at this, as did Orochimaru, but Tsunade still looked slightly worried. Naruto was about to say something, but then the competitors started arriving, so he kept his mouth shut. He could see that Kyoto was staring at him with interest as she kept her eyes glued to him. Soon enough, the room was filled with what was left of the original teams from the Chunin exams, and the sounds of people in the stands high up above could be heard, even though they only seemed to be talking. Naruto looked up to see Keiko walk in. "All right everyone, follow me," she said. As soon as they got out, the crowd started to cheer loudly. "Welcome everyone, we are here to judge the brightest and strongest that the hidden villages have to offer. We shall have 5 one-on-one fights, and then, due to the request of the Lightning Daimyo, a special fight between the best genin that Konoha has to offer, versus 3 of Kumo's most experienced jonin, who have even fought my own clan back during the last few years of the clan wars. Now without further ado, let the exams begin," Hashirama said, receiving a loud round of applause. Beside Hashirama was another throne-like seat, and in it was a man Naruto recognized easily. It was the Sandaime Raikage, and he was looking at Naruto with pure malice. "Welcome Raikage Dono," Hashirama said. "Please Hashirama Dono, call me E," the Raikage said with his usual snarl. "Tell me, for what reason have you ordered the match you have?" Hashirama asked as he sat down. "I have not. The Lightning Daimyo wanted the match. While the boy may have beaten me, I'm not as arrogant to think that there is something I could do to kill him or his teammates so easily," he said as his snarl grew large. Hashirama eyed the man for a few seconds before turning back to the arena. Keiko stepped out to face the genin. Match 1 will be Kyoto of Kumo vs. Uzumaki Naruto of Konoha. Everyone else is to make their way back to the balcony, Keiko said. Naruto was surprised that he would be facing the girl who would eventually become the strongest kunoichi that Suna ever had, but he was too focused on the later fight to care. "Ready, Hajime," Keiko said. Almost immediately a loud clash was heard, as in the blink of an eye, both Naruto and Kyoto were in the center, each with a kunai in hand. Naruto, thanks to his weight training, quickly overpowered Kyoto. Kyoto jumped back just before Naruto pushed her to the ground. She tried to charge him again, but this time put a genjutsu on him. Naruto dispersed the genjutsu almost immediately and brought the kunai up again. Kyoto barely had time to jump back before Naruto drew one of his katana and tried to slash her head off. She didn't get away unscarred, as Naruto managed to graze her chin. Kyoto put her hand to her chin and found that the blood was coming out with ease, but still not taking her eyes off of Naruto. Naruto sheathed his katana and smirked. It was then that Kyoto noticed that there was a strange-looking kunai, with 3 prongs like a sai and a strange seal on it, drove into her jacket just enough to stay in place. She looked back up to see Naruto disappear in a yellow flash and immediately reappear in front of her and drive a ball of chakra into her. Naruto used the Hiraishin and then drove a Rasengan right into her stomach. It took a second for the crowd to realize what happened, and when they did, they burst into cheers. Naruto disappeared in another yellow flash, and the flash could be seen in the cloud of dust created from Kyoto slamming into the wall. When the dust cleared, Kyoto was being held with one katana at her throat, and another facing the back of her head. Begrudgingly, she conceded. "Winner, Uzumaki Naruto," Keiko said. "He's gotten better in the past few months," Hashirama said. "The boy isn't using his dujutsu, why?" he asked curiously. "Because, if he gets caught in a situation that renders his eyes useless, which is really difficult, he's useless, he just doesn't want to become dependent on them, that and it is apparently limited to a timer for each technique," Hashirama said. He gave a knowing look and turned back to the arena. Next match, Uchiha Masaru of Konoha vs. Hideki of Aiwa, Keiko said. Masaru jumped down from the balcony, his face forming an unusual stoic look, which made Naruto wonder what he was thinking. "Ready, Hajime," Keiko said. Masaru went through a series of hand seals at Jonin level speeds. Kaden. Goryuka no Jutsu, he said. Doden. Doryuheki, Hideki said. Much to everyone's surprise, Masaru's jutsu burst through the earth wall and hit Hideki straight on. Winner, Masaru, someone get the paramedics here, Keiko said. Brutal, Jiraiya said. The scowl on Masaru's face was a worrying one and Naruto made a note to check on it later. The next match will be Jiraiya of Konoha vs. Hitomi of Suna, Keiko said. Jiraiya slumped as he walked down the steps. Ready, Hajime, Keiko said. Hitomi took out a kunai and threw it at Jiraiya, who easily caught it. Naruto had found out that Hitomi was one of the weakest competitors left and Jiraiya had managed to get the same info he did, only in half the time. Hari. Jizo, Jiraiya said, and his hair sprung out and launched thousands of hair senbon at the girl. The girl fell to the ground as a hair senbon managed to strike her neck and knock her out. Winner, Jiraiya, Keiko said. As the medics took Hitomi's hair-covered body, she called out the next match. Next match, Orochimaru of Konoha vs. Ao of Taki, she said. Orochimaru smirked as he jumped down. He had been storing his chakra in special seals in his hands. He wasn't on Naruto's level, but he knew all he needed. The seals would activate if he ran out of chakra, in which his chakra would create a small burst, large enough to give him a boost when he needs it, but small enough to keep his chakra invisible. The chances that he would need it in his first match were unlikely, the chances of needing them in the second fight were great. Ready, Hajime, Keiko said. Orochimaru stood still, his cold and calculating eyes staring at Ao in an attempt to intimidate the elder boy. Sure enough, it worked as Ao's forehead started sweating. Orochimaru took this opportunity to rush the boy, a hidden senbon in his right hand and in his left was a kunai, clearly visible. He attempted to stab Ao with the kunai. Ao had by then regained control over his body and parried the kunai. In midair, Orochimaru turned around and threw the senbon at Ao's neck. It hit him dead on and he dropped to his knees. Winner, Orochimaru, Keiko said. The crowd cheered, but not very loudly as the fights didn't last very long and were a bit boring. Next match, Senju Tsunade of Konoha vs. Roshi of Iowa, Keiko said. Naruto's head sprung up at the mention of Roshi. He saw a young boy with fiery red hair. Ready, Hajime, Keiko said. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu, Roshi said. A giant fireball was hurtling towards Tsunade and she wasn't moving. The fireball hit the target. That was too easy, Roshi whispered to himself suspiciously. He turned around, kunai in hand, just in time to block a kick from Tsunade, putting a deep gash in her leg. He stared in shock and horror as the wound started to steam as it healed itself. For Tsunade, this steam went unnoticed as she was too used to it by now. They then got locked in a taijutsu spar. For Tsunade, it was just for a bit of fun as she watched Roshi struggle to keep up. Even so, she was still impressed he even blocked her kick. She kept attacking him, all while looking bored. Eventually she really did get bored and decided to end it with her new Kekkei Genkai. Shoten. Sushotu, she said, and a long blade formed on her forearm as she got Roshi to the ground and held it to his throat. Roshi sighed. I concede, he said. Keiko jumped back down and declared Tsunade the winner. Tsunade looked back up to Naruto and then over to the three Jonin. It's time, she thought as the rest of Team 7 and the three Jonin jumped down. It's kill or be killed, a little voice in the back of her head told her as she gulped. Team 7 were staring down the three Kumo Jonin as they approached the center of the arena. Naruto felt uneasy as he got closer to the Jonin. As he got closer, it started to center itself towards one Jonin in particular. He had a scar running from his left jaw to the corner of his mouth. His eyes were a dull hazel color and his hair was tied into a neat, low ponytail and was black while his skin tone was light. He could feel a familiar chakra coming from him but weaker than he remembered. He couldn't quite put his finger on it but he knew it was bad. The two men beside him looked slightly arrogant, but cautious as well. The first was black and had dark blonde hair, he was also the smallest of the three. The third man, however, was a mystery as a mask covered his face, but like the first man, Naruto felt like he knew him. There was a sick feeling forming in Naruto's stomach as Keiko introduced them for the match. Ready, Hajime, Keiko shouted, bringing him out of his thoughts. The three men charged Team 7 at speeds that most of the Anbu would have trouble keeping up with. Naruto yelled for Jiraiya and Orochimaru to jump back as he created a clone to fight for them. The three Jonin smirked when they saw the look of shock on Jiraiya and Orochimaru but frowned at seeing Naruto and Tsunade. Naruto sent signals to Jiraiya and Orochimaru to keep their distance and attack from long range. He then sent a signal to Tsunade and his clone to attack. The six stayed locked in a taijutsu battle while Jiraiya and Orochimaru helped from the distance, using every available jutsu in their arsenal. At some point, the masked man managed to get a hold of Naruto's clone and tried to stab it with a kunai. He jumped back in surprise, as only fractions of a second later, the clone exploded. Naruto was fighting two of the guys by himself and was doing alright, but Tsunade had already taken off her weights and was using her monstrous strength even though Naruto told her she should only use it when she was struggling. Bansho Tenin, Naruto yelled. Just before Tsunade was about to be struck down, an invisible force pulled her away. You alright? Naruto asked her. Tsunade just nodded. Jiraiya and Orochimaru jumped down. What do we do? They're way stronger than us, Tsunade said, her worried tone was obvious in her voice. Naruto silently placed a seal on the three. They didn't get time to speak any longer as the Jonin rushed them again. Naruto managed to get away, but his teammates weren't so lucky. The three Jonin knocked the three out and took them hostage. Give up, kid, and we'll let them live, the masked man said. Naruto smirked and dropped a kunai he took out when he jumped. He then activated the Hiraishin seal on them. The three Jonin were surprised when the three kids were flashed away and beside their teammate in less than a second. Tsunade got up groggily and when she realized where she was, she felt relieved. One man smiled and Naruto knew where he knew the man from. He didn't necessarily know the man, but what was inside of him. Hashirama never gave the Biju away to other villages, but there were a few that managed to seal some Biju chakra inside themselves, one way or another. Kinkaku and Ginkaku were perfect examples. This man held chakra from the Nanabi. He also proved he wasn't afraid to show it as his companion stepped back and he entered a five-tailed state. Shit, Naruto said as he created three clones to set up a barrier to protect them. Both he and Tsunade then rushed the man but were forced to jump away as he jumped up to stab them. Damn it, what are going to do? Tsunade said. Naruto then came up with an idea. Throw a kunai at him, maybe he'll gloat, Naruto said quietly. Sure enough, when she did, he gloated with arrogance. Ha ha ha, it's no use, no metal can harm me in this form, he said as he caught the kunai and made it melt. Naruto smirked and drew his swords. A bold claim, let's see if you can dance as well as you run your mouth, he said. This made the man angry and he attacked Naruto. Naruto brought his swords up to block and the man, expecting them to melt, went straight for them. To his surprise and agony, the swords didn't melt but instead, sliced right through his left hand and bruised his right. Yeah, what kind of genjutsu is this? He said in between grunts. No genjutsu, just two swords that can resist the burns of Yukai, Naruto said. Of what? The man asked, obviously confused. Naruto let out a light laugh. You don't even know what you're using, he said before giving a hearty laugh. Naruto looked to Hashirama who gave a nod of approval. Now that I have permission, I can show you one of my strongest techniques. It's based off of the strongest technique known to man, the Bijudama, he said, making the man gulp. I call your bluff, he said, starting to feel confident. Naruto started forming a Rasengan in his hand before it shot out into his Rasenshuriken. Futon. Rasen he said before throwing the large spiraling shuriken. The man was so shocked he only barely got out of the way, the Rasen clipping his foot. What happened next was something no one expected. It blew up. When it dissipated, all that was left of the man was his torn headband. The whole audience was shocked at the sheer power Naruto had displayed. In fact, the only ones who weren't shocked were Hashirama, Naruto and Tsunade. Naruto ran forward and absorbed the Nanabi's chakra that was left hanging in the air. The other two men rushed down, hoping to catch them off guard, but Naruto just threw a load of Hiraishin kunai at them. Hey, maybe you should work on your aim, kid, you didn't hit us with any of them, the masked man said. Wasn't aiming for you, he said, charging a Rasengan. He suddenly flashed away and appeared next to the man's partner and shoved the Rasengan into his gut. Before the masked man could do anything, he flashed away again. His eyes widened in realization. Those kunai, they're what you use that technique, impressive, he said. But I have a job to complete, he said, making a hand seal. There was an explosion and the masked man ran faster than anyone could see, towards the cage booth. Naruto and Tsunade both shunshine there. The crowd would have been hysteric, only the explosion released a genjutsu that put them to sleep. When the two got there, they were shocked to see both Hashirama and the Raikage staring him down. Without his mask, which was on the ground, Naruto recognized who it was. Standing there, in all his old glory, was Kakuzu. I am truly sorry, Raikage, but my allegiance lies with someone else. You should have known not to trust a nuke nin, Kakuzu said sarcastically. Tsunade tried to surprise him by using her strength, but Kakuzu just turned with a kunai ready to kill her. Luckily, for the third time that day, Naruto saved her by using the Hiraishin. You really have to stop trying to kill yourself, Naruto said to her. Tsunade just grumbled. Tsunade, go heal Jiraiya and Orochimaru and get them onto the roof, Naruto said. Tsunade was confused, but the look on Naruto's face told her he wasn't messing, so she just complied. I have to admit, kid, you really surprised me today, but your life is forfeit, Kakuzu said before rushing to stab Naruto. He was in shock when he went straight through him, literally. What the hell was that? Kakuzu asked in fear. You should know, you've fought Madara enough times to have seen it, Naruto said. Kamui, Kakuzu whispered. Naruto smirked. Still, it's no use, even as we speak, my allies are attacking and killing the shinobi and civilians, whether you make it out or not, your village will be crippled, heavily, Kakuzu said. Hashirama's eyes widened. Shit, this is bad, he mumbled to himself. I thought so, Naruto said aloud. Oh really? Care to share this with the rest of us, the Raikage said. I'd assume that the Lightning Daimyo has allied himself with AIM. With you gone, he would have more control over your shinobi. With Hashirama gone, Konoha would lose morale, and with my team and I gone, he gets rid of a potential threat, Naruto said. Kakuzu looked shocked. How the hell did he figure it out? Oh well, he'll be dead in a few minutes, he thought. If you think that you've got me all figured out, then you're wrong, kid, Kakuzu said. Kakuzu then tried to use his Earth Grudge Fear technique on Naruto, but it just passed through him again. Come on, kid, we both know you have to turn tangible again to hit me, Kakuzu said in frustration. In his argument, Kakuzu had totally forgotten about the Raikage and Hashirama. Jigokazuki, a gruff voice shouted. Kakuzu turned around, and to his shock, the Raikage was right in front of his, with his fingers driven through his chest. It's going to take more than that, Kakuzu said as he used his Earth Grudge Fear to take hold of the Raikage and began to squeeze. Mokutan. Mokuryu no Jutsu, Hashirama said. A giant dragon with a trunk nose burst out of the ground in the arena and went straight for Kakuzu, who was forced to release his hold on the Raikage. Kakuzu jumped to the roof in an attempt to escape the dragon. It was then that he saw Team 7, fully healed. Just because you're technically immortal, doesn't mean we can't kill you, Kakuzu-san, Naruto said from behind him. He turned around to a sight he wasn't prepared to see. Naruto was there, in a three-tailed state. Silver chakra had consumed his body and made him look more feral. You're a Jinchuriki, Kakuzu shouted in fear. Yes, only unlike your friend, I cannot be consumed by the hatred that comes with it, Naruto said, his grin becoming more feral as he entered the four-tailed state. Naruto's teammates jumped to his side and Tsunade followed suit and entered her own four-tailed state. Two Jinchuriki, damn it, Kakuzu whispered to himself. He was brought out of his thoughts when Naruto started charging what looked to be a Bijudama, only about as small as his palm. Cho mini Bijudama, he said before firing. Kakuzu managed to dodge it, but the explosion was great enough to reach the bottom mask on his right-hand side. He didn't get any time to rest as when he landed, Jiraiya and Orochimaru were right on top of him and they were attacking with such precision that he had to jump back or risk losing another mask. At least that's what he thought until Tsunade came and threw a punch right through his wind mask, leaving only his earth and fire mask. He jumped away from the four when he realized that he had forgotten about the Hokage and Raikage. Jigokazuki, the Raikage said, driving two fingers through his earth mask. Kakuzu, the invasion was a failure, they knew we were coming, a voice behind Kakuzu said. Naruto recognized the voice, it was Hidan. Pray tell, what time do you call this? You were meant to be here as soon as the explosion went off, Kakuzu shouted at his companion. I just told you, the invasion failed, the Nadaime Hokage was waiting for us, we only managed to injure a few. We're in full retreat, Hidan said while he panted, beads of sweat were falling from his chin. We need to get out of here, I only have 2 hearts left, Kakuzu said. Hidan looked at the group before the two shunshined away. Naruto and Tsunade dropped their tailed beast states and while there were a few visible burns and scars, it was nothing serious. Hashirama had a look of relief on his face as he looked over the village. The group, including the Raikage, rushed towards the only place that had smoke rising from it. When they got there, however, it wasn't a sight they were expecting. Tobirama was lying on an operating table, unconscious. What the hell happened here? Hashirama said in a demanding tone. I'm afraid that Tobirama-sama was taken by surprise, we don't have time to get to the hospital so we're operating here, a nurse who was carrying equipment to the table said, her voice was reasonably distressed. Naruto looked over to Tsunade and saw that she was extremely worried that Tobirama wouldn't make it. He held on to her hand and even after all this time, it amazed him at how easily it calmed her down. Tsunade looked to Naruto and he just smiled. Tsunade seemed to calm down a bit but Naruto could still feel her tense grip and sweaty hand, telling him that she was only putting a brave face on. After an hour of intense surgery, Tobirama woke up. The only problem was that they were still doing surgery on him. Shit, he shouldn't be awake, one of the doctors yelled. Hashirama. Tobirama's voice was raspy as he reached out to his brother. He then made a hand sign and touched Hashirama's forehead as he whispered, memory transfer, making Hashirama stumble back. Tobirama then looked towards Tsunade and Naruto. When he saw their interlocked hands, he smiled, before letting out his final breath. There was a morbid among everyone there. Tsunade's eyes were filled with tears but her expression stayed the same as she knew it would have been hopeless. The surrounding shinobi all turned towards the small, makeshift surgery table. A look of despair and anguish on all of their faces. The silence stayed as time seemed to stay still. Naruto put his arm around of Tsunade's shoulders when she started to shake and tremble. Since Naruto was slightly taller than she was able to cry into his shoulder silently. Naruto comforted her quietly as he didn't want to break the silence. Only 3 remain, he thought as he felt his shoulder becoming increasingly damp. Naruto looked to the Raikage and even he seemed to be paying his respects. Naruto looked to the sky as a drop of rain splashed against his forehead. The rain started to pour down. Later that day, Konoha would find out what had happened. Naruto knew that it would be a sad time for Konoha and there would be people in the thousands to pay their respects, but right now, let them go about their normal lives, as they remain in the dark about the death that would send shockwaves through the nations. 3 days later, Naruto slowly stirred out of bed. He stared at the ground beneath him as he remembered the last 3 days he spent comforting Tsunade. It was only now that he realized just how close he himself had grown towards the people he now called his friends and family. When Konoha had been informed of Tobirama's death, the silence was so great that even the noise of the rain seemed to lose its volume. It hadn't stopped raining in the last 3 days. Some people said that even the heavens were crying as Konoha gained the record for most rainfall in Hai no Kuni. Naruto remembered the funeral for Sarutobi in his old time and knew that it proved to be the third largest amount of rainfall Konoha ever had. He walked over to his closet and got dressed in funeral attire. He knew what kind of grief Tsunade must be going through, and he would take all the things she would say to him in his stride, because he knew she would regret the bad things she'd say after a while. He walked downstairs to see Tsukiko beside a blood clone to take care of the twins while she was dressed in a funeral dress. She looked over to see Naruto. "Ready to go?" he asked her. She nodded and they slowly walked towards the memorial shrine. As they walked, more people began to leave their houses and joined them. They eventually reached the graveyard, which was large enough to hold hundreds of thousands of men and women. There weren't that many graves for shinobi compared to civilians as they were split down one side. However, at the head of the graveyard was a large shrine. Naruto saw Tsunade, just staring at the grave that her grand uncle would soon occupy. He walked up to her and put his hand on her shoulder. Tsunade was so deep in thought that she jumped when he placed his hand on her shoulder. Tsunade turned to see Naruto and moved closer to him as she looked back to the ground. She probably didn't understand what love meant when it came to someone she wasn't related to since she was still young, so she didn't seem to think that her actions as anything out of the ordinary. Naruto frowned when he saw the look on her face and was about to say something to her, but a gong sounded through the quiet graveyard. People made way as the coffin that contained Tobirama was carried through the crowd. When they reached the grave, they laid the coffin next to the grave. The priest at the head of the grave started to speak, but Naruto wasn't paying attention. He used his free hand to form some hand signs and 2 red roses appeared in his hand. Tsunade looked at him when he handed her one. She took it from his hand and stared at it intently. Unknown to her, Naruto had placed a seal on it that would stick to her. It would open when she was calm enough for it to do so. Soon enough, perhaps a little too soon, it was time to put the coffin into the grave. Everyone started to drop flowers on top of the coffin, so Tsunade walked over with Naruto and the two dropped theirs in. Tsunade looked up at the pictures of Tobirama and a fire in her eyes that had been reduced to embers relit itself as she gained a look of determination. Naruto looked at her in surprise. He didn't think that the seal would take effect so soon, nor did he think it would take effect as well as it did. When they were walking out of the graveyard, Tsunade turned to him. "Can you help me get stronger than them?" she asked. Naruto was slightly confused. "Like who?" he asked. You said your parents put you through a strict training regime when you were 2 and you could take on the Raikage only 2 years later. Can you help me get to that level? She asked with complete determination. If I did, what would you do with that power? Naruto asked, worried that Tsunade might turn out like Sasuke did. Tsunade looked down to the ground. I don't want the people I care about to die like that. I want to protect them till they die from a natural cause, not by being killed, she said, looking straight into his eyes. She's matured a bit. I think it's safe. Akira's voice rang through his head. Naruto sighed. All right, he said. Tsunade visibly cheered up. On one condition, he said with a smirk. Tsunade's face halted the smile she was about to show. You don't complain about anything, just do it. You complain too much and too often, Naruto said, his smirk turning into a genuine smile. Tsunade smiled and they walked out with the last few people. They were so busy with their thoughts that they never noticed their fingers interlock. They both went home that evening, ready for different things. Tsunade was ready to dedicate the next couple of years of her life to training with Naruto. Naruto was ready to start what he came here to do. Jiraiya and Orochimaru would also be training with his blood clones, he wasn't about to leave them behind while he and Tsunade advanced. Naruto walked into Tsukiko's house and as soon as he entered, Amaterasu was coming to greet him. It sometimes crept him out how she was able to get to the door just as he was about to walk in. He picked her up and closed the door as he walked into the sitting room. Tsunade walked home to her grandparents. She knew how close they were with their brother-in-law. She saw her mother, staring at a picture of him. It amazed her at how many lives one soul could touch. She even noticed that Nawaki was quiet, though that might be because he was put to bed early, she honestly didn't know. She walked to her room and on her bed, were the healing books she had been reading before the third exam. Damn it, I'm so close, I know it, just a little longer, then I'll be as good as Gigi, she said to herself. She started to put the books away when she saw one that she had never seen before. At a first glance, the book looked plain and old, not really appearing to have any worth. When she opened the inside, the title showed it all. Healing, an advanced look on the art of no hand signs, by Hashirama Senju, she muttered aloud to herself, feeling like slapping her forehead at the title her grandfather came up with. She saw a small note on the bottom, hidden by a genjutsu. When she released it, she was surprised at its contents as she read the note out loud. Dear Tsunade-chan, don't tell your grandfather but I borrowed one of his books, I know you'll love it, maybe in a couple of years' time you'll be as good a medic as he was in his prime, love Mito. Tsunade smiled. Don't worry Ba-chan, I'll be the best at everything I do, she said to herself. In her head, a little voice laughed a bit. Except gambling, the voice said. Tsunade started muttering about a cheeky fox before putting the book under her pillow. These next few years were going to be long and with war breaking out soon, Konoha would need all the help it could get. She started to think about what happened with Naruto earlier and smiled again, only this time, she blushed. She was glad Nawaki was too young to say much, otherwise he'd be teasing her about it. It was in this moment that Tsunade realized she had a crush on him, and it wasn't a childish crush either.